So it's time to get cracking with the chassis. So off camera, I've tack welded some big 1/2 inch nuts to the underside of the chassis rails. Now the reason being is so I can bolt through the body mounts into the chassis when it's boxed up. So what I need to do is I need to clean the rails internally, get the chassis upside down, weld up fully the nut sections that are kind of welded in. Fill a load of holes. I've got a load of holes that I'm not using, so those need filling, and then we're going to get on to actually attaching the boxing plates themselves. So hopefully by the end of this we'll have a freshly boxed frame, and then we can crack on hopefully then with some internal kind of tube work and cross members. That was a bit of a long-winded process, but we've got all the holes we're not using filled. All the ones we are using with threaded kind of nuts have been welded up. I've cleaned the inside of the rails, cleaned the outside, but the outside I'm going to address at a later date a bit better. But the inside has been basically epoxied with some 1K Pro-Excel epoxy, really good stuff. Not sponsored by anyone, but if I was, they would be the people I'd like to be sponsored by, because it's really, really good stuff. So essentially, we've got the plates, and some idiot has put in a brace exactly where the plate needs to be, and also this mount again where the plate needs to be. So I'm going to have to just notch out temporarily this panel, can then tack it in, and then when it comes to fully welding it at a later date, obviously I can refill in those gaps. So plan is put it up, get it in, and try and do some tackets. Back end is nicely tacked in with a TIG welder, and then what I've done is I've flipped over the rails and decided to put in some drainage holes. So I put 6 18mm drain holes in it. I'm debating tomorrow to put in some in the back as well. I may just do 2 here as well before obviously I box the inwards bit of that off. Reason being is because the back's not going to be fully sealed, because I want to be able to shoot some kind of cavity wax all the way through the frame to make sure it's protected long term. Rather than it being able to rot from inside out. So that's the plan with it. The only other thing I've done as well is I've flipped the brace. So there was a brace that was welded inside. I've kind of clamped it to the table off camera and just moved the brace around so I can actually get my plates in. So it's epoxied up. I'm going to leave it overnight for it to cure. I'm going to flip this over in the morning, and then we're going to tack weld these big long front sections in. So I've got out this morning planning on boxing the middle bit, and then after doing a bit of digging online last night and bringing the spring out to check clearances, it kind of dawned on me that I probably should do a front notch. Now I'm not going to do a full notch, but if you come with me, I'll show you what I'm doing. Originally this piece of metal was in here, and as you can see, obviously the further out lip kind of here sits quite far out, so there's a potential for the spring to touch it if it's a really soft spring. Now it isn't in my case, but I am fitting a really heavy engine in it, so kind of at this stage now it makes sense to notch it, because even if I don't need this notch, it's a lot easier to do it now than it will be once the vehicle's painted. So the plan was, or is, shall I say, is to weld in obviously this section on the inside of the rail here nicely, and then what I'm going to do is create these cardboard templates but out of 3mm steel, and we're going to pop in a little section like this, and then we can seam weld all the way around there across the bottom as well, and then I'll probably just TIG the top, because obviously I want as much clearance as possible. I don't really want to grind anything back, so I'm going to TIG the top in, and we'll have loads more clearance than obviously originally like this. And we're going to do that both sides. It will add a lot more strength into this cross member as well, because obviously you've got additional kind of welds around it. And yeah, that is that. We're not going to box anything forward to this. It's then going to be boxed all the way from the rear. And the reason it makes more sense to do this now is because obviously this is going to create a lot of dust and debris, and I don't want that finding its way into kind of the main rail. So I can do the work here first, and then once that's done, ground back, cleaned up, we can then clean all this section and get back to fitting the capping plates. We've transferred the little design over to some thick 3mm steel, and we're going to chop them out with the angle grinder, clean them up and get them ready to fit. So we're flipped back over, a dash of epoxy primer's gone on as well, and now it's time to fit these inner plates. One side fully tacked in, now it's time to tackle the other side. Tacked, so I'll get a bit of card and make these final rear pieces. They've since been epoxied, and while I was waiting for the epoxy to dry, I also bashed in two 18mm drain holes. Now the reason I've done that is because I've decided against having the back of the frame fully open. So I've made some kind of small plates again out of the 3mm, and we're going to box off the back of the frame completely. However, like I said, if water does get into the frame from obviously one of the mount holes, we've now got an additional drain hole at the back. So overall there's 8 drain holes, all 18mm, pretty big holes. But yeah, it's time just to kind of weld in all the stuff that I've made out of 3mm. all tacked in, it's time to start laying some little slugs. Now I'm going around with a TIG, welding an inch at a time. I've already done a little bit off camera, but I'm welding like here, then I'm going to the other end welding, maybe doing a few bits here and there, but just making sure to space everything out so obviously I don't overheat or warp anything. It is pretty thick still, so it is cooling down fairly quick, but yeah, it's a long drawn out process. So one side fully welded all the way up. Obviously it was made of inch stitches, but it is what it is. I need to keep it cool. So I need to flip the chassis over, do exactly the same to the other side. I'm not going to bother recording that. I'm going to end the video here. And in the next video, I'm going to start making all the tubular cross members. So I'm going to have to get the roll cage bender out, a bit of CDS, and start planning what I'm doing in between the rails. So if you watched far enough along, just want to say thank you. Hopefully see you in the next video. Peace out.